All right. And we are live. So, welcome to Winterviews, Season 3, Episode 1. Hard to believe that we've gotten this far. I am your host, Catherine Silva, Cat for short. And tonight we're kicking off Series 3 with the great Anthony Rapino. And I should have asked you, are you cool with me calling you Tony, or would you?
Tony,
would you prefer
yeah, Tony is the. I thought you were going to ask, am I okay with you calling me great? And certainly, if you like. It's a bald-faced lie, but I'll take it. Yeah, Tony is in real life. I'm Tony.
Okay, awesome. So Tony, how are you doing this evening?
Fine, just fine. Even better now because I have a little bit of bourbon in front of me, and we're about to talk all kinds of things horror. So I'm pretty happy.
Awesome.
And my headache went away, so that's great too.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to say that you had a headache. I'm glad that it's gone. I know how much of a pain those can be. But a little bit of bourbon fixes everything, right?
It seems to have done the trick. The Advil, not so much. The bourbon,
yeah.
Now we're talking. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Although I did my taxes earlier today.
Oh no!
That was awful. That was the single worst part of my day that stretched for about 7 hours. So,
not to get off track like immediately, but I'm just curious if you don't want to talk about this sort of thing. That's fine. Do you do the whole I'm a writer, so I'm doing the Schedule C and the deductions and all that kind of stuff? Yeah. Okay. That's what can sometimes.
There was a cat escaping your office in the background, and I just noticed it.
That's little blind Luna.
Oh, blind Luna.
Yeah, she's she had we rescued her as a kitten from like a feral community, and she had feline herpes. Both eyes were really bad off. And they wanted to put her, like the vet wanted to put her down, and I ran a quick GoFundMe because I was kind of not doing great money wise at the time, and people really came out in support, and we got her the surgery. They removed one of the eyes. The other eye is like there, but I think it appears she could see like a little light and shadow.
Gotcha.
She does great.
Yeah. My parents have a cat that's blind who I don't think can really see anything. His name is Buddy. But Buddy, the black cat. But as far as the writing, the taxes go, yes, I do the Schedule C and all that stuff, and that's always a pain. Just because you have to tally up all of the expenses, and then at the very end, you're either having a really good day or you're not, and this time was it not.
Yeah, so, it's not usually good news for me either when I start putting in the extra income that hasn't been, I don't know, tallied, I guess, by the government already. Yeah. And then I put in my meager deductions, and they never quite add up to enough. And it says take the standard deduction. I'm like,
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. This year it was the health insurance that got me, because I, didn't change things when I should have, and then it killed me. But anyway, we're not here to talk about my taxes. We are here to talk about the blurred horror genre. And I will say we did have somebody say hi in the chat. Marcia says hi. And thank you for watching, Marcia. We appreciate it. We are here to talk about blurred genres in horror. I'll just read from my little thing here. Some of you might know it better as genre-bending horror, which is essentially when a medium uses at least a couple different genres, i.e. comedy, Western, fantasy, and blends them with horror, or successfully dupes the audience into believing it's one of the other genres or subgenres before they reveal the horror aspect, which is one of my favorites. So before we jump into genre-bending horror, would you mind telling our audience just a little bit about you and your writing?
Sure. So I've been writing for, a couple decades, probably even more than that now. I forget how old I am sometimes. I write mainly horror, and usually, and this is kind of when you asked me like what genre I wanted to talk about, one of the main reasons I said, genre bending or blending or blurring of lines is because I rarely think about that sort of thing. And in fact, when I first started writing, it was someone else who told me that I wrote horror. I didn't know. I just wrote what I liked. And, when in one of my little groups, they sort of were like, "Oh, so you're a horror writer?" I'm like, am I? Okay, sure. That's what I am. So yeah, I don't know. I approach things in that way. It's like, just kind of like, I like to write what I like to write. And, I have a few novels and stuff. I say a few novels, really a few releases. The most recent one isn't even horror. Go figure. It is called Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions, and it is, if you want to talk about like genre mixing up, it's a young adult intrusive fantasy coming of age novel that takes place in the 1980s. And that was me like trying to say like how can I be as honest about this genre as I can, which meant like jamming a bunch of words together that makes it sound like just, word salad. Previously, my the next like most recent release would have been my short story collection, Greetings from Moon Hill, and before that, my first novel was a Soundtrack to the End of the World, which is a metaphysical zombie novel with a twist. And otherwise, I sculpt. Some people know me under the banner Candy Corn Apocalypse, which is my tertiary sort of sculpting business, if you want to call it that. I most recently have been writing YouTube scripts for a channel called Retro Days. The series is called Celebrating Yesteryear, and it's exactly what it sounds like. A whole lot of fun nostalgia stuff. I do a new script every week, and we essentially have a new release every Saturday around noon on the Retro Days YouTube channel. That is not my channel. I just kind of write for it, but we have a pretty cool team together over there. And yeah, I don't know. I teach.
I actually did not know about the YouTube channel, and you mentioned it a couple times when we were talking before we started recording. But that sounds actually like a lot of fun. Just sort of the reminiscing of yesteryear.
It is. It's something very different than what I normally do. I guess I should explain a little bit that the whole reason I got into that because I don't know if I call him co-author, but the other name on the book, I'll show you really quick. On the Order of Cosmic Champions, the other name on there, Anthony Great. He is so it was like I wrote it and it was story by Anthony Great. He's the owner of the YouTube channel. So after we worked together on this novel, and I had worked with him on other little projects here and there. I did some sculptures for his other webpage at one point years ago. He hired me on to write for the YouTube channel. It's a lot of research sometimes. And if you're not like, I don't consider myself a nonfiction writer, so it is very different for me. But I had been for a while writing little articles for his other, he has a webpage called the 80s Exchange, which I was doing some articles over there for a while. So it's kind of like a natural progression, I guess.
Okay. And I will be providing links to both of those things when we post this on YouTube later. So if anybody is interested in the YouTube channel or the web page, we will have those available. So, back to the genre blending of horror. Let's start with the most obvious question, which is, what is it about genre bending that excites you?
Okay, that's a good question. So anyone who saw my post earlier, it's about time for you to drink, because I'm gonna bring it to food. I'm totally gonna talk about food now. I'm the sort of person that, like, when I go to a restaurant and I open the menu, I can't decide because I'm on everything. So buffets, that's where it's at. You got all the different choices. You can kind of mix and match a little bit. And I really kind of feel that way about entertainment as well. I enjoy something new, something weird, something that you're not expecting. I liked your mention earlier about how, like, one of your favorites is sort of the, putting the wool over your eyes a little bit, not telling you what the real genre is, the little kind of twisty thing. I mean, to the point where I will not read a synopsis of a book before I read the book. I won't watch trailers for movies before I see the movie. I just don't want to know anything, really. And that extends into genres, in the sense that, like, I know I like horror. Mm-hmm. So, like, throw it at me, man. Give me what you got. I'm here for all of it. And the weirder and the more surprising it can be, the more I like it. I know not everyone's like that. We could point at things like what is it, the second or third season of American Horror Story, when they just, like, took a dump truck of horror stuff and, like, it's an asylum. Like, no, it's an alien thing. No,
that's every season of American Horror Story. but season 2, Asylum, I think, is definitely the let's throw some aliens in there.
Yeah, it was the most blatantly done one. And I'm not necessarily, I mean, that's not even blending genres so much as just, like, completely switching them on you halfway through. But, so I know that, like, it's not everyone's cup of tea necessarily to go that far into the fray. But, give me a good blended genre any day, a little sci-fi horror, a little comedy horror, whatever subgenres you want. And yeah, that's what excites me, is that, I guess, the mystery of it, the unknown aspect. I don't want, a lot of times, I mean, sometimes it's nice to know what you're getting into, I guess. But I'm not the type to be like, oh, well, that's a straight up slasher. Okay. It's like, okay, but you can do something different now. I guess maybe it's also just a little bit like everything's been done so much that to get a little something different in there.
Do you have a favorite combination when it comes to the genre blending?
No, I wouldn't necessarily say a favorite. I don't know if this even counts as a blend. Does it count when it's like comedy and horror? Is that?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, technically there's subcategories, but I feel like all of those subcategories are just made. they're genre blends, and then you can get more blended with even more subgenres beneath that. It's like a crazy brainstorm family tree deal.
Yeah, it gets pretty interesting. I guess I would probably go with, like, I like comedy and horror. And again, I know, like, there's a whole subset of horror fans who don't consider that horror at all. Depending on, I guess, how much comedy there is in a thing. And maybe I'm talking about movies a little bit more than novels when I talk about that kind of dislike of the blend of horror and comedy. But I don't know. There's something for me that, like, no matter how scary or how dark or how tense a horror novel might be, just a moment, even if it's just a moment of levity here or there to break that tension for a second, I like that. And depending on how you feel about it, you may or may not think that works. You might want that, like, unrelenting, dark, just horror. And I admire that. I'd like it to, depending on how I'm feeling in any given day. But yeah, I don't know. That's just my style. I like the little bit of the bizarre, a little bit of the weird, a bit of the comedy, and sci-fi horror. Love it.
Yeah. I feel like comedy is one of those ones. It gets. I think that there's a lot of expectation out of comedy horror that, like, if it's not done right, then people will just like hate it, hack it to shreds. And if it's done really, really well, then it gets a lot of acclaim. And something like What We Do in the Shadows, which is really like horror comedy done well.
Yeah.
It still has those moments of like grotesqueness, or those moments of darkness. But yeah, it's that's a good one. And sci-fi horror is certainly a giant in the category.
Yeah, there's just so much inherently scary about space. Like, even if you don't go like in an alien sort of direction with it, it's a scary, just the realities of space can be very scary to me. I liken it to, like, one of my great fears is the middle of the ocean at night. Like, just dump me out of a boat into the middle of the ocean at, in the pitch black. Like, you don't know what's under there. That's that fear of the unknown. It's beautiful. So yeah, I mean, I feel like the vastness of deep space can have that same effect. Well, yeah, I do enjoy that quite a bit. I point to, not for sci-fi horror, but getting back to the comedy thing, I point to, surprisingly, maybe to some, Stephen King a lot, because I feel like he's not writing comedy horror, but like it's rare that you read something he wrote that doesn't have a moment or two of levity here or there, like just a well-placed joke or a moment of lightheartedness. So, and it's less, I guess at that point, it's less of that blended genre thing, but just a good use of comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something that is inherently so, well, a lot of Stephen King's things are very giant, first of all. And second of all, they tend to really like hit you with the dread and the terror and everything is going to hell in a handbasket. So they do need just a little kernel of something light to catch on. So I would agree. And then as far as what you were saying on sci-fi horror, and you did mention the ocean, I was going to say some of those deep sea sci-fi horror things, like Underwater is one. There's a great video game by the guys who did Amnesia. Of course, I'm going to forget the name of it, but it takes place in the bottom of the ocean. That one's absolutely terrifying as well. Yeah, wonderful, spooky, horrific. Never would want to be there.
Yeah. What now? I forget if this was. It probably wasn't even billed as a horror novel at the time, but I remember being I read it when I was younger, and I remember being terrified at moments of it. Is it Michael Crichton? Who wrote Sphere?
It's Michael Crichton.
It
yeah.
Is? Okay.
Yeah, Sphere is absolutely one of those movies. Yeah.
Yeah, I read the novel first, and they did it. The movie wasn't bad. The movie, I think, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I saw the movie, and been a while since I read the book.
Yeah.
But I read the novel early on and then saw the movie when it came out. But yeah, the novel was one of those ones where, and I was younger, but And I'm sure it wasn't like that wasn't billed as like a horror novel, right? That was probably like thriller.
Probably not. He didn't. I don't think any of his stuff was ever billed as horror. Even Jurassic Park wasn't billed as horror.
Yeah.
But a lot of his stuff had a dark horror twist to it.
Yeah.
Even some of his thrillers. So yeah, and that's not one that I've read, but I would like to read.
It was, yeah, again, it's been a very long time, but I remember it affecting me on the same level that some horror stuff that I've read in the past has affected me. And maybe it's because of my innate fear of like deep sea kinds of stuff, but yeah, there were really cool ideas in that one. But yeah, I don't know. That just came to mind when you were talking about the underwater and deep sea sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Well, in addition to Sphere, what other books or films or whatever would you say have kind of had a lasting impact on you when it comes to the blended genre of horror?
That's a good question. Strangely, and it's not even horror. Again, it's like a lot of the stuff that really affects me that I pull from often is outside the genre. I guess maybe that's why I like it's like that's what bending and blending the genre is bringing these other kind of aspects in. I love Kurt Vonnegut. He is, he was just amazing. And I often look at, and I've read a number of times, it's one of the few novels that I have read multiple times, like probably a good dozen at least. It's rare for me to do something like that because there's so much to read. And I'm sure like you go to one of these conventions, you come home with a stack of another 20 books.
Oh my God.
It's like there's no time for all this. So for me to go back and reread stuff doesn't happen often. But Cat's Cradle, Kurt Vonnegut's novel, it's a very short novel, maybe even novella, you might consider it. It's like it's science fiction, but it's not. It's an apocalypse novel. It's a religious novel. It's got horrific elements in it. It's literary because fucking Kurt Vonnegut. Yeah, and there's just it's just so like he's his own genre. You call him sci-fi or literary science fiction or whatever you want to call him. He's Kurt Vonnegut. He's his own genre. And those are the kinds of authors that I often like gravitate toward, the ones that are doing their own thing and they kind of shoehorn it into this or that, whatever, because of marketing. But it really could fit in so many different places or nowhere. I like that. So yeah, in general, Kurt Vonnegut has been a big inspiration, and specifically Cat's Cradle, and to a lesser extent, he's most famous for Slaughterhouse-Five, Breakfast of Champions to a certain extent. Yeah. The Sirens of Titan was a big one for me, which again, more sci-fi than anything else. Chuck Palahniuk. I've talked about him a bit in, at times before. Again, not specifically a horror writer. I don't know what genre he is like marketed as, really. Do you know? I actually don't. I honestly don't even know.
I don't really know.
Probably like just fiction, or I know like people call him a shock writer. That's not a genre though, really. But that's my point kind of too, is like, I don't know. I don't even know what I'm reading when I read. It's just it's Chuck Palahniuk. But a lot of his stuff, again, is like this very effective, minimalist at times narratives that just get down to, the core of human nature, which is fucking terrifying if you get close enough. And, I adore that. Or it's been a while. I kind of like tapered off a bit from Chuck Palahniuk once I was out of college, I guess, or
Mhm.
once I got a little bit older. I haven't read his newer stuff. I'm mostly talking about his early catalog. Lullaby is, Survivor. I actually didn't read Fight Club until much later. I saw the movie before I ever read the book. The movie is what introduced me to Chuck Palahniuk as an author, as I'm sure it did for many.
Yeah,
And
I'm ashamed to say I haven't actually read any of him.
He's an acquired taste, not for everyone, for sure. And then depending on where you're entering, like I think around the time of like Pygmy and Snuff, I started getting a little less interested and stepped away for a bit. And now I don't know what he's doing now, so I have to re-explore, see if it's still for me. But his early stuff for sure was very effective. But again, I'm choosing authors here that aren't specifically horror writers that you could argue are like self-contained genre-wise, just weird writers who write what they write. As far as like,
sorry, I just want to say there is definitely something inherent in pulling content, pulling ideas from non-horror authors to blend into your horror book, though. Like those influences, being able to throw them in the mixer and make something new is really cool. And the fact that those are influences that you've pulled from is awesome. And it's not necessarily what a lot of other horror writers do. A lot of horror writers just read horror, and that kind of shows when you read some of their stuff that they're not pulling from everything that they read. So that's, anyway, I just wanted to say that was cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, specifically horror, if I'm being completely honest, as of late, I've mainly been reading contemporary authors. I read your work after AuthorCon, the collection, which I enjoyed immeasurably. It was really good. And Amanda Headley and Laurel Hightower, Jason Parent, Tom Reimer. Basically everyone I met, a lot of the people I was meeting over at AuthorCon last year, I just grabbed a bunch of books, and so I've been reading a lot of Rob Atone. I really have to read more of his work. I read the Sleepy Hollow Gang for a blurb, and I haven't.
Oh, nice.
I haven't actually dug into his. I have 2 or 3 of his books sitting here that I need to get to. And then, I have a couple of books that I have to read for blurbs, and you know how it goes. After a while, It's like and that's hugely important. And I personally overlooked that for the longest time, that the importance of reading our contemporaries, the people that we're, essentially working with, so to speak. We're all in kind of the same sphere, and seeing what's out there and what's current. I have this, like, as a teacher of English and literature, I have this tendency to look backwards a lot, and I'm always, especially for my classes, I'm always going kind of like back and back and back to the literary canon, and and sure, there's a lot of amazing, great stuff that is important there, but there's a lot of really important, great stuff happening now that I got to mention. Todd Kiesling, obviously.
I was going to say, Todd, the Todd who is watching right now, like, please mention my name.
I don't know that he's watching, but
he is. He has commented.
Okay.
He said yay.
I don't have eyes on the chat, so I don't know who's watching or who's commenting. I meant to. Is it on Facebook? I flashed one of his comments up on the screen, but I wasn't sure if you had seen it or not. So, would I see the yeah, of course, Todd. And every single thing Todd has ever written
And now we've also got Red here too, which is awesome.
Red, yeah, I have to read some of her work too. When we hit AuthorCon again, I'm just gonna scoop up a whole bunch more of novels and stuff. I keep looking. I don't know if you notice as I'm. Oh, you could kind of even see the
Your
stack.
Yeah.
There, right next to the giant bowl of candy. But yeah, I'm a slow reader. Red's new novella is great. Yeah, I have to pick that one up.
It's quite good. I've also read it. No, it's hard. I have a stack of books from last year's AuthorCon that I haven't gone through either. And the problem is that you want to stay current. You're trying to keep up with everything that's coming out. Like, so far this year, I've read 4 books that haven't come out yet or that have just come out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm caught up there, but like I've got this backlog that just needs attention.
It really gets crazy. I have I'm gonna say his last name wrong probably. I met him at the it was like a Barnes and Noble Halloween thing. Sam, is it Rebellion? He's wrote Winterviews. I'm terrible with names.
That one I'm not sure. Is it Rip? That one I'm not sure about because I wasn't there. So.
Yeah, I'm bad with those names. Who else do I have sitting there? Ken Kane. I got the Never Wake anthology sitting there. Vile little thing we created. Robotone. Yeah, just a whole bunch of greats that I need to get. Rebel
Ein, I think, is the pronunciation.
I lost myself for a second and almost slugged this from the bottom.
All right. We're getting to the like silly side of the show now.
I forgot what the question even was at this point.
No, I was actually just looking at my notes to try and figure out what I was going to ask next. And I guess you already answered it, but I was going to say, are you currently working on any novellas or novels or anything like that besides your the script work that you're doing?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me to. I'm sure every writer who's watching knows how this goes, but there's so much between grading and lesson planning and the scripts for YouTube and sculpting and prepping for all kinds of stuff. Chug, not bourbon. So I'm working on a novel that I've been working on for the past year and a half. It is tentatively untitled, I think. I think I came up with something like as a placeholder title, but it takes place in the 90s and it's very much inspired by things like The King in Yellow. And I mean, minorly, it's not a huge, yeah, but it's got a little bit of that. It's basically about I don't know how much I should even say because I have about 60,000 words written on this one, so I definitely have another 20 to 30 to go before I finish.
Gotcha. Yep.
But the premise or the setup is that a bunch of kids going to high school go show up, and there's this kind of like I guess we would call it a chapbook, but more like a photocopied magazine is circulating around college or high school. And almost immediately the faculty is like coming down real hard on getting rid of this thing for some reason. And they're grabbing them and doing locker searches and whatnot. The magazine itself, they find out, was first being circulated about a decade earlier. So there's like this urban legend about it. No one knows who created it. It circulated for a little while in like the 80s. This takes place in mid 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then disappeared. And, a lot of weird things happened around the time. There were some missing persons and people going, weird stuff happening to them. And so the faculty is kind of scooping them up and trying to get rid of them. And the main group, the main characters of the novel are trying to figure out like what's going on. Why are people acting so weird about this magazine? And simultaneously just incredibly fascinated and curious about it, because it's this horror magazine created by a student, seemingly, that there are these legends of being amazing about like urban legends and things happening around their town. So they are very invested in getting a copy. Like this is all they care about is get it. We need to get a copy of this thing. And of course things go awry. I'm terrible at summaries. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you've hooked me, and I'm sure you've hooked other people. It sounds really intriguing. What would you say are the blended horror genres in this story?
Ooh, I mean, there's definitely comedy in it. Almost everything I write has some levity and comedy. There's certainly going to be kind of like I guess we just call it what's the other word for when we want to say something's Lovecraftian?
Like eldritch horror or existential or
I might go more existential than Lovecraftian necessarily. Yeah. But there is like the unknowable, right? There's an element of that. What's that?
Like cosmic horror.
Cosmic, that's it. That's why I couldn't think of cosmic horror. It's got the elements of some cosmic horror. There's going to be probably a little bit of, I mean, there's a lot of homages, obviously, in something like this. Oh, you will be, Todd, and you will be crying by the time you're done. Todd said he expects to be a beta reader. He will regret this. A lot of homages to movies and novels of the time, so that kind of like that sort of like 90s horror stuff. I'm trying to like slot in moments that feel like 90s horror to really get like a oh god.
I feel like Rob is in the chat right now. He's got some bad habits.
Oh no. So yeah, I'm working on that, and there's a short story I'm working on for. Oh, I saw you're going to ZervCon.
Yes, so,
ZervCon. Yeah, he the guy running that is commissioned a story from me. And
he did. That's awesome.
Thank you. So I have something in the works for that. I don't want to talk too much about that one because that is very early in the conception. But I'm trying to get something kind of cool for him going.
Nice. Yeah, that looks like it'll be an interesting convention.
Yeah, he invited me to that, and I was thinking about going, but it's hard for me to get away. AuthorCon is like the big, the one that I'm doing this year.
Yeah,
like last year. And to get away again for like a big one like that is a little rough.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, it looks cool. I mean, I saw you're going, Rob, Tom Reimer's going to be there. It looks like.
Yeah.
There were a few other names.
New England people headed that way. Got Aquino going too.
Oh, nice. Is that that's an easy drive for you, or is that kind of far?
Cape Cod's not bad. It'll be 6 hours, 7 hours, something like that, probably, but not bad. It'll be fine. It's not as bad as Virginia.
Okay.
Being the 2-day drive down and back. That's 4 down and back.
Yeah, that's a crazy one for you.
But it's worth it.
Yeah. Todd got me to go last year, and then I opted in again because I had a good time. I don't love travel, which is one of the reasons I don't do a whole lot of stuff like that as far. I was going to say, like, your definition of not bad, the 6 hours to me is like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, but I'm also putting that up against, putting that against the Virginia drive, putting that against my insane drive to Canada last year. Like, I have benchmarks. So 6 to 7 hours is like, it'll be fine. It's good.
I drove the 2 hours ish to Todd and Erica's. Yeah, Todd said he had to sedate me for the drive down there. I literally, like, we wake up that morning, I drive to his place, and then the next morning it's like I pop what do they call them, the nausea pills,
oh yeah, yep,
those guys. I pop those on and I just kind of curl up in the back seat and like go to sleep.
Well, I mean, hey, whatever works to get you down there. I'm really glad that I got to meet you last year. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a great time. I'm glad that we got to do this too. I'll be honest, when you mentioned last year, when I think I asked, I was like, I think I asked, can I be on your show? And you're like, yeah, we're not doing it until next year. I'm like, okay. Like, it's never going to happen. It's a year away. But you remembered.
I did. Yeah, no, I write down whoever usually contacts me about being on the show. Like, I'm like, okay, I have to have these names written down for next year, and we make it work. And then this year I didn't do January because I needed a month to recuperate. So it's a smaller grouping than usual, but you were always going to be in it for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love doing these. Like, I don't do many of them, but the few times I get to do like podcasts and the YouTube live things or Facebook live things or whatever, it's so much fun because I don't, besides yelling information at my students about writing and reading, I don't get to talk to people about it that often.
Yeah.
My students just like, they get the glit. Oh, God damn it, Rapino, let us go. Not yet. First, let me tell you about this. I had a moment like that today where we had literally a minute left in class, and I looked at the time. I was like, can I do it? Do I have time? I was like, before you guys go, wait, I want to tell you about this thing. We were talking about Kate Chopin's The Storm, the short story The Storm by Kate Chopin. And, oh man, I really wanted to get it in there. And I looked at the time and I looked at my students who were like, I was like, oh, fine, just go, you bastards. You go enjoy your weekend.
No, there's definitely something nice about like being able to talk writing with other writers, and not have it feel like you're just droning on and no one cares.
Yeah. I am lucky enough to have this one student in my morning class who is a horror fan, which happens every once in a while that you get like the diehard, like you could spot them usually too. It's like, oh yeah, yep, you're a horror fan. And it's, I don't explicitly like start the first class and it's like, I write horror. I don't do that, but I guess there's something, I don't know what it is. There's something about me that just screams horror. It's probably the Freddy Krueger thing hanging off my backpack. I don't know. But they usually spot me pretty quick, and they, so it's cool to have like students who are into horror and want to talk about that stuff.
Yeah. It's definitely, well, it seems to be a lot more, I don't know, socially accepted now, than it felt like it was when I was in school. I don't know if you feel the same, but
I haven't been fired yet.
But it's like when I actually had a chance to go judge some writing. It was a creative writing contest that kids at my high school were doing, and I went and did that a few months ago. And all the entries were like horror entries. and I was and there was a theme that you know you could have taken it other ways, but it did lean itself to horror well. But I was kind of surprised. I was just like, whoa, all right, this is not something that I saw when I was in high school in a creative writing class. This was like, this is cool. I am so glad that there's more of this.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely notice a more accepting nature to, or in a more open, maybe it's just more, mainstream or something, but
yeah,
I was last semester, I was introduced to some concepts in horror that I wasn't even aware of. In fact, I think I texted Todd right after. I was like, do you know about this? He's like, yes. Where have you been? But it was like, and I don't even remember it now. It was, it had to do with like, it's mainly like YouTube horror stuff, like the sort of creepypasta adjacent sorts of stuff, I think. And I completely forget the name of any of it now. But it had to do with like, I guess a little bit of like found footage-ish kind of stuff, like found media, I guess.
Yeah.
But they were telling me about these YouTube channels with the really interesting stories and podcasts and things, and I sometimes have a blind spot for that kind of stuff. I'm getting old. I'm not with it anymore, fellas. Just I tell my students, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about anymore. Just pile the dirt on top of me. I'm gone. But no, there's some, it's kind of neat. Talk about age. I just said the word neat. It's kind of neat to be introduced.
I use neat too. Whatever.
To be introduced to like new horror stuff by my students, that's great. Yeah, it is more accepted, I guess. And I see a lot more of just, and I don't know if it's just the mainstream thing or not, or just, I think it must have something to do with availability. And nifty. Yeah. Oh God, I say that word too. Is that bad?
No, nothing. It's not bad. Nifty is not bad. Neat's not bad.
Nifty and
you say that's fly, then we've got a problem.
Ooh, that's reaching deep in the bag for sure.
Yep.
I forgot what I was talking about. Wait, that's a drink, right? If I forget what I talk about, you got a drink? I don't remember my own rules.
No, your rules were if you started talking about food then you had to take a drink. But
enchiladas. There you go. Golly gee golly gee whiz beef.
No, it's okay. Everybody's comments are delayed because of just the way that my internet is, so I apologize in advance, which you will get now.
Is that every comment that pops up, or should I be on another page looking at this?
No, so I'm popping the comments up on the screen to show you so that you can see them. And I'm getting them like maybe a half a second to a second before you're getting them. But then they're posting on Facebook, and then it's posting to StreamYard from Facebook. So there's like a whole train of stuff going through.
Okay. I went to the I don't know. I don't want to get into the weeds here.
No, you're in the right place. You're in the right place. But we have 10 minutes. I feel like it would be not doing ourselves justice if I didn't ask you the question about your horror books. Because you've already told me that Tommy and the Order of Cosmic Champions is not a horror book. And here I was thinking it was.
There's a lot of it takes place during Halloween, which was
Okay.
it was like my nod to, and there are creepy moments. I can't, in all good conscience, I can't say it's a horror novel as much as I'd like to. And it's weird. It's like, I'm very proud of that novel. I really loved writing it. I think it's an expression of something that I've been wanting to say in one way or another for a very long time. But as a horror writer, it's so hard for me to like market it. It's like,
yeah,
people who read my other stuff, and I said, well, this is young adult. I call it young adult. It's absolutely readable for adults. It's just that it's got that coming of age thing going for it. And,
sure.
The language is toned down. You're not going to see like, I mean, if you've read some of the stories in Greetings from Moon Hill, none of that shit's going to happen. Tommy and Nora Cosmic Champions. But, yeah, I don't know. It's just a hard one for me to like kind of, I want to recommend it to everyone, but at the same time, like, well, if you don't, I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you can, and it's you're not calling it a horror novel, and that's fine because it's not. And I think saying coming of age makes it very open to everybody. It doesn't just have to have the appeal to young adults. I love reading some young adult books. Like to go back and reread some of them. They're wonderful.
It's one of
I will admit. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, is one of the, like, as far as books go, it's pretty chunky. It's
Sure.
As far as a young adult novel goes, there's a lot in there. So what were you going to say?
No, I was what I was going to say was that until you told me that you had that your co-writer was your YouTube channel guy also, I was really expecting that it was just your doppelganger from a mirror universe because his name was also Anthony.
Right. He might as well be. I mean, there was a lot of like strange sort of coincidences and parallels between what he wanted me to write and what I was going to write anyway. It's weird. It's like, so he hired me to write it. Essentially, I was like, I at first was a ghostwriter, until he was like, "No, I'm putting your name on it," and no, we're I didn't realize any of that. I thought I was just going to be writing something that was going to be published in his name, and I was being paid to do it. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But as we were working on it, it became more of a collaboration than I realized it was going to be. And there were these moments where I was like, so I'm thinking about this. And he's like, there were just these kind of moments of serendipity that we were like, oh yeah, that's exactly what he wanted and what I was going to do anyway. And it just fit very perfectly. So he might as well be my doppelganger. I don't know.
I was going to say, I feel like this needs to be its own horror story now. That whole thing.
It might just be. It might just be. I'm sorry, you were going to say something though.
No, well, so since we're into sort of almost the last 5 minutes, I figured I would go to my question that is non-subject related, which is about cooking and horror, which is going to be sort of the new thing for this series. It's be a side question. Do you think you'll ever incorporate cooking into a future book?
I kind of have, actually.
Ah, okay.
I mean, I guess it wasn't cooking specifically, but I was years ago at this point, I was into homebrewing beer because
cool.
Because why not? I have like a fascination with food science and fermentation, and while I'm not a huge drinker, the idea of like making my own beer really just hit me as interesting and fun. The beer recipe, yeah, Todd knows this very well because he was in the unfortunate position to want to publish this thing. But in I have books sitting next to me, and Greetings from Moon Hill, my short story collection.
Ah.
There is, we published a I don't know where it is in here, but there's a my beer recipe for a Moon Hill pumpkin ale, which is an actual beer that I have brewed myself. Ooh,
I'm drinking my pumpkin ale right now.
You still, is it leftover from?
Oh, you better believe it is leftover. I search for that last box of Jacko, no matter where it is, and I scoop it up and then I save it.
Nice. I had a similar backlog of pumpkin ales at my brother's house for our Friday horror movie thing. But you're not gonna be able to see this, are you?
No, I can. No, not quite. But I can tell it's in recipe form.
Yes. It's it is an actual beer recipe for pumpkin ale that I used to brew myself, and so that was incorporated. I have also in my short story in that same novel or same collection, Loosely Enforced Rules is the name of the story. And there is a lot of like this kind of back and forth about the perfect way to make French fries in that story, which results in just the most disgusting tragedy you've ever seen.
Oh God!
But it's
I can kind of guess maybe.
Oh, it's a terrible, terrible thing I wrote. It's probably the most disgusting thing I ever wrote. Everything before the recipe series. It's a story. Oh, there's a story about the recipe. That's right. I don't remember what I've written in the past, but Todd, thank God, does. There's a whole
documentarian bunch of, here.
I mean, that collection, and I've had mixed reviews about the way in which everything connects, because I think some people go into this expecting more of a connection, but like all the stories in here are connected by the town of Moon Hill, and they have a lot of like recurring characters from one story to another, and some plot lines that kind of jump over the borderland of one story to another, but in a very like just every story is standalone, but they all kind of have some sort of like relationship with this town of Moon Hill. And the beer appears in, I don't even remember what story it was, but it appears somewhere. I should be able to remember this stuff, shouldn't I? So to answer your question, yes.
Well, I'm very glad that cooking makes an appearance. You do make a lot of recipes and post them via your Instagram. So I was hoping there would at least be some bit of that in your writing.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm not posting about Halloween or horror, I'm probably posting about food.
Is that a phone?
That's a real phone. That is that's a landline phone.
Wow.
Because I live in the 1980s.
I had a landline for about 5 minutes 5 years ago, and it was one digit off from the Rite Aid that was across the road.
Oh God! So you got a lot of like pharmacy requests and stuff.
Yeah. It was rough. But
a lot of requests for OxyContin.
God, like I can't even the number of people who would just assume I'd start telling you things that you didn't need to know. But that's a horror story for another day. It is 9:00, and that is the end of our program. So I do want to thank you very much for coming on Winterviews and sharing all of the wonderful things that you could tell us about genre bending and beer recipes and nostalgia and
We
deep
didn't even
sea
get
and
to the wild
space.
jackalopes.
We did wild jackalopes.
We didn't even get there. It's crazy that didn't come up, but
didn't even know that was a possibility, and now I feel really like let down.
I had a great time, and I'll just say this: could have done this for another 5 hours.
Same. Like this was a lot of fun. And I'm terrible generally at asking questions during interviews because I get just really like nervous, but this was so laid back and wonderful. I could keep going.
I'm glad. I mean, I generally think that my own nervous energy kind of makes things easier for everyone else. Everyone looks at me and they're like, well, I'm never going to be as awkward as that. So
I don't know. I feel like our nervousness is wow. I'm not even going to try again. That they just kind of canceled each other out, maybe.
Yeah, it worked out very well. Todd, I mean, I have to say, he's calling me Anthony Frappuccino once again.
Yeah.
Which, if Anthony Great wasn't my alter ego, then Anthony Frappuccino absolutely is.
I mean, that's a great nickname, though. I like that.
I do like coffee.
So it's perfect. That's perfect. So we had a wonderful evening with Anthony Frappuccino here, Tony Frappuccino. And next week on Winterviews, which will be Thursday, the 22nd of February, we're going to invite the lovely Red Lago on to discuss grief horror, which is the best, most wonderful subgenre of horror. One of my absolute personal favorites, and I cannot wait to talk about it. So awesome. Stay tuned for that, ladies and gentlemen and gentle people, and have yourselves a good night and take care.